AOC. She's a trip, isn't she? So AOC recently had an interview with GQ magazine. Yes, she's milking every bit of it. And during this interview, one of the things that was discussed is he talked about several topics, but one of the things that was discussed was about the possibility of AOC running for president. This was the first time I've heard her really not be receptive to it. And she is receiving criticism for her comments that she made in reference to it. But let's go ahead and get into this. And then I have a video clip I'm going to show you about this as well. AOC reveals pessimism about running for president. I live in a country that would never let that happen. My experience here has given me a front row seat to how deeply and unconsciously, as well as consciously, so many people in this country hate women. Let's go on. AOC has revealed her pessimism about running for president. Speaking to GQ, Miss AOC, sometimes little girls will say, oh, I want you to be president or things like that. Now that's coming from AOC. It's very difficult for me to talk about it because it provokes a lot of inner conflict in that I never want to tell a little girl what she can't do. And I don't want to tell young people what is not possible. I've never been in the business of doing that. According to the magazine, her speech slowed to a crawl. She broke eye contact and tears pooled in the corner of her eyes. You know, this woman can really cry on the spot. Just like when she was crying at the border, the kids are in cages. Those kids are still in cages. No tears from her about that now. Interesting. The progressive New York Congresswoman said she believes two contradictory things at the same time. One is just the relentless belief that anything is possible. But at the same time, my experience here has given me a front row seat to how deeply and unconsciously, as well as consciously, so many people in this country hate women. And they hate women of color. People ask me questions about the future. And realistically, I can't even tell you if I'm going to be alive in September. And that weighs very heavily on me. So I'm assuming this portion here, she's probably talking about, I know she gets like death threats. That's probably what she's referring to. So yeah, let's go back in here. And it's not just the right wing. Misogyny transcends political ideology. Oh, you don't say. Haven't we been trying to tell people that? Like misogyny is not just a right-wing thing. Left, right, and center. This grip of patriarchy affects all of us, not just women. Men, as I mentioned before, but also ideologically. There's an extraordinary lack of self-awareness in so many spaces. And so those are two very conflicting things. I admit to sometimes believing that I live in a country that would never let that happen. So something I've noticed about AOC, she has a tendency to use the right vocabulary, but at the same time, and by the right vocabulary, I mean the way that a politician would speak. But at the same time, she doesn't provide details about what she's talking about. So for example, she's talking about patriarchy. She's talking about lack of self-awareness in many spaces. What spaces? What places? Give examples of some of those the lack of self-awareness that you're talking about. What are the examples? That's something that I've kind of noticed about her. Like she says, she does what politicians do. They kind of talk around it, but they use vague language and they don't really. Chip Walter, I just looked over and saw that. Smash that like button. It's just, what are you talking about? And don't get me wrong, like I'm a female. I'm a black female. Let's be real, there's spaces she's accepting in that I'm not accepted in. Let's keep that real. Oh, saying the quiet part out loud. Yes, I am. Remember the macro and the micro. Yeah. So, but I think it's important to give detail. I don't like the vagueness. I don't like that. Could Obama have gotten elected without the kind of financial support that he had? She asked. Well, that's every politician. No politician is going to get elected without financial support. Let's be real. Come on. And even then, if the DNC decides they don't want you, you still won't be there. Bernie Sanders raised the most money, right? Not Joe Biden. But they decided they didn't want him there, so he was gone. You see how this works? But it's just funny. She makes it seem like the only reason Barack Obama won was because he had the money, but she makes it seem like, I'm going to put this up here. Could Obama have gotten elected without the kind of financial support that he had? I don't understand that question, because no politician is going to win if you don't have the money. That's the point of fundraising. Usually, now I say usually the candidate with the most money wins. So what did that tell you about Bernie Sanders and the DNC? So I don't get that. I think that was her trying to use the Obama was a black man card and he only got through because of this. And it's like, that's every politician has to have that though. So don't get that point. Since arriving in Washington, D.C. following her upset victory in a 2018 midterm primary, and that was when she ran against Joe Crowley, AOC said she has experienced a lot of targeting, diminishment from my party. And the pervasiveness of that diminishment, it was all encompassing at times. I feel a little more steady on my own 2 feet now. But would I say that I have the power to shift the elected federal Democratic Party? No. Again, what is she talking about? This phrase right here, do like that, experienced a lot of targeting, diminishment from my own party. What are the examples? What are you talking about? Then she goes on to say, and the pervasiveness of that diminishment, it was all encompassing at times. What are the specific examples that you are referring to? I just see you using a lot of big words. Again, she's speaking like a politician. What is that, Pugsy? Mark Pugsley said there's no such word as diminishment. Let me go back in. Oh dear. It was open hostility to my presence, my existence. What did people say? What did people do? What are the examples of the hostility? I mean, if you're going to say that, you might as well go further and mention the examples. To me, this is just vague. Okay. Any sort of criticism of the Democratic Party is immediately cast as helping the right, or you're disrespectful, or you don't know everything that these people have done. And we do, but we are also allowed to learn from the outcomes of those victories and the unique dynamics of the present moment. To also say that we have to change track and we can't just do the same thing for 30 years. And this is the point that I always point to about this strategy of progressives running through the Democratic Party. This is the problem. Any sort of criticism of the Democratic Party is immediately cast as helping the right, or you're disrespectful. Don't you know what these people have done? So this is why I honestly felt like AOC and all the rest of the squad members should have left the Democratic Party and started their own thing. They have enough popularity now to make that happen. They really do, especially someone like AOC. But this isn't going to change, though. And I hope someone like AOC, Ayanna Pressley, Cori Bush, all of them realized like that's not going to change. You went into a party that is corporate. You won your races by running grassroots campaigns. That's kind of seen as a threat to all the people that you're among in DC that have to take corporate money, because now they're being called elitists, right? You joined that party. The party is not going to change to please you. You are going to change to please them, or they're going to taunt you. They're going to humiliate you. They are going to blackball you. They are going to push you out unless you go their way. And if you don't believe me, talk to someone like Cynthia McKinney. Talk to someone who's been there. This idea of progressives coming in and taking over the Democratic Party, in theory, it sounds like a good idea. I believe that too back then. I'm just going to be honest with you. I supported all of them. But when you hear them openly admit, and it's more so her and maybe Cori Bush, when you hear them openly admit that the party is not allowing this to happen, well, then what's the point? I don't know. Let's go back in a little bit more here, and then I'll play that video. I have always felt that the true power in the U.S. relies in mass movements and social movements. Well, AOC, that happens on the outside, not on the inside. The civil rights movement happened on the outside. The women's rights movement happened on the outside. The George Floyd protests happened on the outside. I just mentioned 3, I guess you would say, mass movements or direct action that we've had in this country. None of them happened inside of DC. That's the problem. If you want to still have those mass movements and social movements, you have over 1 million followers on Twitter. All you have to do is tweet something out and thousands of people will be there. Kid you not. That's all you have to do. But if you think that you're going to get these politicians with you in DC to jump on to some type of movement with you, you're wrong. They're not activists. They're not organizers. Most of them are not. Most of them are just politicians, and they're totally fine with that. Maybe this was not a good idea. That's right, Theron. AOC couldn't even promote the Medicare for All March. That's right. That's right. JB, she has over 12 million followers. There you go. So it sounds like she's waiting for someone else to do this. You have the largest following out of all the members of the squad. Why don't you do it? Oh, I'm pretty sure because you've already probably been told by people like Nancy Pelosi not to do it. And there are many people who will not do something until they are forced, until their hand is absolutely and utterly forced, whether that be for decisions of self-preservation or otherwise. And so there have been moments where I feel like I have been part of influencing an outcome or a decision by the party. I feel like everybody treated me like a one-term member of Congress, and they worked to make me a one-term member of Congress. Wasn't that what she said? She had no problem with being on Jimmy Dore's show. When Jimmy Dore interviewed AOC when she was running the first time, didn't AOC say that she didn't care if she would be a one-term congressperson? So why would she even let me go on. Let me go on. See, wait a minute. That right there, you know what that tells me? That tells me that she had political career aspirations all along. That tells me that she was not going to be a one-term congressperson. That tells me, look, when you intern for Ted Kennedy, and I'm here in Massachusetts, so I'm here to let you know, when you intern for Ted Kennedy, first of all, not just anybody gets that interview or that internship. Not everybody gets the interview for one, and not everybody damn sure got that internship. So if you interned for Ted Kennedy, you already had political aspirations, okay? So this story about being a bartender, which we found out some of that wasn't even true. This whole story about being a bartender and leaving out that you had started a startup, that's disingenuous and that's unfair to the people who really did support you and donated a lot of money to you. If you wanted to be a politician, just say you wanted to be a politician. But let's stop pretending like you came from the working class in the Bronx and you just happened to win. You worked hard and you won. I know about those. I worked at BU, you guys. She went to BU. I'm telling you, you don't just get an internship with Ted Kennedy. Okay. There was a very concerted effort from the Democratic side to unseat me. And I felt a shift after my primary election. And it felt like after that election was the first time that more broadly, the party started treating me like a member of Congress and not an accident. Yeah, when you started kissing Nancy Pelosi's ass. Pardon the language. That's when they changed. When you went from protesting outside Nancy Pelosi's office to calling her mama bear, to not forcing the vote, to voting to give money to Ukraine, voting present when it came to the Capitol police funding bill, voting for the Iron Dome, when you started going along with the Democrat establishment, that's when they started treating you like you were a member of Congress. Let's not pretend you just woke up one day and they decided, hey, we're going to be nice to her now. No, you started kissing ass. Sorry. Call it like I see it. Now, there's a video because, as I told you, some people did not like her comments about running for president. Of course, you know, Fox News had something to say about this. First and foremost, I think everyone on this panel is ridiculous. But this is how they're looking at this now. The fact that she didn't think that she could become president because people hate women. If that were the case, and as much as I despise Hillary Clinton, if that were the case, Hillary Clinton wouldn't have won the popular vote, AOC. Let's look at the numbers and be real. The majority of Americans that do vote voted for Hillary Clinton. And if she wants to flip that around and say, well, I wouldn't win because I'm a person of color. We had Barack Obama as president 2 terms in a row, boo. So you can't, I get it. But she's acting like it hasn't happened. And the reality is this, and we may not want to admit this, but if we didn't have electoral college, and if we did go by the popular vote, Hillary Clinton would be the president right now. So the majority of Americans had no problem voting for a woman. The majority of Americans had no problem voting for a Black man. That's the problem with the message that she delivered. Now listen to what they got to say, because you know they're going to eat this shit up. They're going to eat this alive.
AOC getting a new fawning cover story from GQ, which is still around, which calls her the political voice of a generation and the right wing's night terror in the flesh.
First of all, what is this? What is this? Why are we making politicians celebrities? Why are we doing this? When did this start to happen? Like, you can't complain about getting a lot of attention when you enjoy being a celebrity, when you feed into it. If you don't want a lot of attention, don't go on GQ. I'm sorry. You like being a celebrity, bud.
The radical congresswoman opening up on her own shot at the presidency, but she says the country is too sexist for it to happen. My experience here has given me a front row seat to how deeply and unconsciously, as well as consciously, so many people in this country hate women. And they hate women of color. People ask me questions about the future, and realistically, I can't even tell you if I'm going to be alive in September. I admit to sometimes believing that I live in a country that would Never let that happen. But if she ever wants to be president, AOC is worried our checks and balances system, which is the bedrock of our Constitution, would block her radical ideas. God, don't you hate that Supreme Court and Congress? So this is. She seems sad, like she's going through something. Was this a cry for help?
I think she whines a lot. And it's when she says, I don't even know if I'll be alive in September. Well, none of us know that. It's like that is life. I mean, this is like you go out there. I find her completely uninspiring.
Right.
I find it almost banal and boring. And I also feel like, you know who would never get a GQ cover from the Democrats?
That's right.
Abigail Spanberger. And she is the Democrat that actually is like a moderate person, and somebody that like would get along very well with Harold. She'll never get that. And I actually think the Democrats, they get held back by people like AOC because she's pulling them so far to the left.
She says we don't like women in this country. I would disagree with that. I think Harold would agree that we do like women, and we like women of color. Example, if Michelle Obama announced she's running for president, landslide. What is AOC talking about?
Well, first of all, she's Debbie Downer. I mean, she said when she talks to little girls about them becoming president, she says, I don't want to tell young people that it's not possible or what's not possible. Hey, aren't you a dreamer? Isn't that how you got into Congress?
See, I told you. The moment like I saw that article, I was like, ooh, they're going to eat that up. They're really going to eat that up. People are laughing at her.
Then she says so many people hate women. No, they don't hate women. They hate stupid women. They hate women who make believe there's something when they're not something. And you think you're going to die in September? Well, I'll bet there's a whole generation ahead of you who are probably going before you. Stop feeling sorry for yourself and stop being such a downer. And then she says men suffer from patriarchy. You know what? Get out of the dumps. You're in Congress. Enjoy your life. Be happy.
Yeah.
So, Harold.
I don't know if I can follow that.
So this is, you're right. She's supposed to be an inspiring leader to everybody, but especially to young women. And she just gave a speech and she's like, you can't become president and I'm going to die. I mean, what is that?
Right, so I think there's some ideas that the progressives have that are ones that resonate with some parts of the country. And there's some.
It's not some parts of, I got to say something here for a second. It's not some parts of the country. The country's just like split down the middle and shit. People are like, oh, this side of the country is left, this side of the country is right. No, if you look at the exit polls, the majority of Americans agreed with Medicare for all, having health care for everybody in this country. So the majority of Americans actually agree on the issues. I don't like the way he framed it with certain parts, a certain part of the country. It's not a certain part of the country. I talked to conservatives in 2020 that agreed with Medicare for all. So I don't like it.
Value and currency in a lot of it. But when you hear the person who literally and figuratively is the voice of that group sound like this, uninspiring, predictable in so many ways, and making it always about her and the plight that she has. That's not what politics is about at its best. We talked about her running for president on the show a few weeks back, and you talked about her needing to go through a political maturing process. And it sounds like she might be stalled right now, because if you're serious about wanting to be president, you don't claim the country will never elect you after they elected Donald Trump and Barack Obama too, and now in Joe Biden in the last 12 years.
I told you she shouldn't have said that. She shouldn't have made that comment. Because there's people, I can understand if we didn't have any previous examples to point to, but we have previous examples to point to. So I didn't think it was a good idea for her to make that remark.
You get out and you talk about the reasons why you want to be president. You get out and talk about how you're going to make life better, how your ideas will transform the country, and not reject me personally, because I don't agree with a lot of her. You can't reject me and other voters because we don't agree with you. You have to persuade us, not bash us in the process. Politics has become more of that. And unfortunately, she's starting to manifest a little of the worst aspects and elements of politics.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a woman running for president, you don't call everybody in the country sexist. You wait until you lose, and then you call them sexist like Hillary did, right?
Yes. It is September. Should we be checking? I mean, have we heard anything from her? Do we need to make a safety call or just something? Because I'm a little worried. I don't have her phone number, or I would call her. Just a point before I make my other point about, she went and did a, quote, men's magazine. Now, in the woke, non-binary world, that is a huge violation. There should no longer be men's magazines or women's magazines. Why are we having this bifurcation, this binary patriarchal setup? That's dictated by men who created that magazine and create women's magazines. That's got to go. But
See? I'm not going to show much more of this. I think it would be good for AOC to take a step back from the spotlight for a bit. That means no more magazine covers for a while. None of that stuff. Like, take a step back, because the more you put yourself out there, the more attention you're going to get. That means negative attention as well. That doesn't mean it's going to be positive. And if you are having difficulty handling that, and it sounds like in that article, sounds like she's about to break down. If you are having difficulty handling that, I think it would be good to take a step back. If you look at the other members of the squad, you don't see them all over the place all the time. Ayanna Pressley, Cori Bush, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar. Do you see them on the cover of magazines all the time doing these in-depth interviews? No, that's AOC. She embraced it. And when you embrace that, I mean, you get all the stuff that comes along with that, good and bad. That's my take. But Ryan Knight hit the nail right on the head. Ryan's always on point here. Stop worshiping politicians and turning them into celebrities. And he was right. And that post got over 3,000 likes. You know, you put yourself out there like that, you got to be able to face the criticism, and you will get a lot of criticism. Same thing with this show. For those of you that want to do like YouTube news shows or whatever, you're going to get a lot of criticism. I get a lot of criticism. Difference is, it doesn't bother me, but if you're sensitive, it can easily bother you. So that's something to note. I'm gonna go to some of the comments here. Casey, I can't with AOC lies. No, she doesn't tell little kids anything. She cries in front of them while they beg for their parents. Theron said AOC is telling us not to expect anything from her. Jared, it's like Greenwald said. You could replace her with Crowley and not know the difference. Ouch. You don't like my music. There's a series of filters in politics, just like education. People who want serious reform or change are weeded out. That's right. JB, they could literally leave the party and they'd still be in office at the same time. They can move as a collective bloc. The problem is they choose not to. Elvin, the Democrats will throw us some crumbs now and then just to quiet us off. But they'll go back to business as usual of tax cutting for the rich. That's right.